Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Friday Frothy for another exciting show. Glennie, how are you, mate?
Oh, mate, I'm really good, especially when I'm talking to a absolute legend, mate, of the mighty great Flying Hawks.
Can you believe it?
How good are you enjoying this tonight?
Oh,
hey, being a North Melbourne supporter, mate, this is gold, mate.
Guys, off my reviews. You're listening to the Friday Frothy. What a fantastic show.
I've been told Campbell Brown, absolute superstar.
Oh,
great bloke, fantastic to talk to.
I really think I know him.
You probably do. 205 games played for Hawthorn, Premiership player, 2008 against Geelong. He's represented Australia, Victoria. He's an All-Australian player. Yeah. Mate, what else can you say?
He ran out of luck when he went to the Gold Coast, mate. That's what we'll talk to him about.
We'll find out what's going on. Join us, guys. Welcome, please, Campbell Brown. Campbell Brown, mate, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Friday Frothy. My mate beside me here, mate, is a one-eyed, absolute devastating Hawthorn supporter. So he'd
fair to say, Campbell, I'm beside myself. Mate, it's well done, mate. But
that's good to hear. You're obviously a good judge then.
Very, very good judge, mate. And I'm probably a little fair bit older than you, only probably a year or two. No, I can actually remember you watching your father play, so I'm probably giving it away. So. No, you had a distinguished career. I would have thought at Hawthorn, and one of the players I like to watch, Jeff.
Yeah.
So nice and tough and hard. And,
really need to find something in this last 8 minutes. There's Campbell Brown giving it to Nat Nui. Irresistible force and immovable.
Campbell, you first of all, mate, can we call you Browny?
Of course, you can call me whatever you want.
No, we won't go that far. Come on, mate. No, first of all, mate, you grew up in Perth, and you get selected to Hawthorn. First of all, what got you into football? Obviously, your father. Yes.
Yeah, grew up in a football household, and that's all I ever really wanted to be. If you had asked me as an 8 or 9 year old what I wanted to do when I grew up, I always used to say I want to play AFL footy. I was born in Perth. We moved when I was 9 years of age because the old man got a job at Richmond trying to sort them out during that Save Our Skins campaign, sort of through 93 to 96 and try and help them financially. And then he was pretty moved back to Perth. But me and my sister loved it so much in Melbourne. We'd settled into school and life that we didn't really want to move back to Perth, so we ended up staying in Melbourne and just sort of played local footy, Hawthorn Citizens, got selected in the TAC Cup team for Oakley Chargers and juggled that with school football and was never sort of a standout junior. I was a late maturer, so I was always quite small and had to work pretty hard on a few aspects of my game, but certainly wasn't one of those kids you look at 14, 15, 16 and say, they're definitely going to play AFL footy because I probably wasn't on the radar until my top age as an 18-year-old, and sort of few things went my way through hard work and got picked Vic Metro under-18 team, but I was probably the last pick. They only picked 25 and I was there on the last night, and there was 28 of us, and I knew that 3 had to sort of get the arse, and I squeezed into that team and had a good carnival, and the rest is history.
Wow.
So with that, Brownie, so when you were at school, being Oakley, I suppose is like Hawthorn recruiting now. They go to Oakley, these sort of places. Was that the pickup with you, or through your father? How come it wasn't Richmond? What was the story there? Why Hawthorn? Is it because it was area and they saw you, or obviously your dad was at Richmond? It obviously couldn't go on under father-son there, or how did that work?
He hadn't played enough games for father-son for Richmond.
No.
They did. I could have gone father-son to the West Coast Eagles because they'd done some arrangement over in the Waffle that if you'd played over 100 and something games for certain clubs. You qualified for West Coast, and the other clubs it was the Dockers. But I didn't have a lot of clubs super keen on drafting me, and while I had a bit of a chat to Richmond and a bit of a chat to the West Coast Eagles, I think they were purely doing it to appease the old man. They weren't really interested. But John Turnbull was the recruiter at Hawthorn at the time, and one of the big things that he wanted to sort of introduce to the Hawthorn side in the early 2000s was a bit of grunt, a bit of hardness, and that's probably the reason that he was super keen to pick me up. And from that draft, they got Luke Hodge, Sam Mitchell, and myself. Clearly, the instructions and what he wanted to do was add a little bit of probably ferocity to that side, which was blessed with a lot of great players, but were probably deemed as the pretty boys of the competition in the early 2000s. A lot of guys with the tipped hairs and the men for all season calendars. So we had the skill, we probably just didn't have the hardness. So just fortunate that I went to Hawthorn because, like I said, I sort of grew up in that Hawthorn area, and I could have gone anywhere.
Yeah, you fit it in.
Flies, can't mark it. Ball hits the deck. Sam Mitchell again. Tries to thread a handball through. Campbell Brown. Jackson. He's put Jackson down. Jackson hasn't moved. Mitchell gets the handball up. Birchall floats one. Peterson waits under it. Jackson's still down.
Oh, you've got to love Campbell Brown's attacking the ball. Look at Browny. He's walking over to him, Browny, saying there's a bit more of that coming.
Yeah, you fit it into that like a glove, mate, because with obviously when they ended up getting Brett Werra from Port or St Kilda.
Yep.
I mean, you had guys, he was similar to yourself, very nuggety, tough, hard at the ball, and we had some nice, tough players down there, mate. And obviously then Crody, he would have been there sitting around full back, so it was a pretty good line. And then throw in Hodge, of course, and the younger guys then.
Absolutely.
Wasn't around it.
Browny, who did you back for as you were growing up, mate?
Richmond, I was a die-hard Richmond supporter, used to go every single week. Favourite of mine was Tony Free, Jeff Hogg, some of those guys, Matty Knight. So loved the Tigers. But it's funny, when I started playing AFL footy, one of the sides that I hated the most was obviously Essendon, but the other was Richmond. So you quickly you lose your allegiance once you play against them and get to know a few of them.
What about now, mate? Who do you follow?
I'll always be a Hawthorn person through and through. And the decision to go to the Gold Coast was just based purely on trying to extend my career for as long as possible, and they gave me that opportunity. And while it was up and down up there, it's been pretty well documented. Hawthorn's always going to be, the team I support, the team that my son will support, and my home.
Your good wife, obviously you're married with wife Jess, which obviously I looked that one up, mate, but so we Googled that one. But other than that, you guys together then when you was at Gold Coast?
Yeah, we've been together for a long time. I met her when I was 21, and we've been together ever since. So we got married. What are we now? 7 years coming up to. So Jesus, it's gone quickly. But she was a great supporter of mine. She moved to the Gold Coast with me, and she loved it up there. The lifestyle.
She did. That was the question. Yeah. Okay. So she didn't mind the move up. And what about kids, mate? With kids?
Yeah, little Boston, 2.5.
Boston?
He's a lunatic. I think he takes after his mother. He's full of energy.
And you're back in Melbourne now, though, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
Moved straight back to Melbourne.
Yeah.
The Gold Coast I wanted to get involved in media football, and there's just no work up there for a former AFL player because it's obviously NRL territory, and they sort of, I think it goes rugby league, rugby union, surf lifesaving. Everything's bigger than AFL up there, and so I moved straight back to Melbourne to work in the media.
Yeah, but what was it like working? I know you did a fair bit with Wayne Carey and that. Listen on the radio. You still do anything with him at all, or?
Not anymore, because we used to do previewing every round for the last.
That's right.
6 years with Bet Easy, and did a bit of work with him on Triple M as well. But that's sort of that's not around anymore. But Duck's got he's got a great footy brain, and I think it's a matter of time before he's sort of inducted as a legend into the Hall of Fame. It's not going to happen this year, which they've just announced. But
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's just, when he speaks, the footy world listens because he's obviously very revered.
Well, I mean, I watched him. We down here in Tassie, I can remember watching. It was funny back in those days. We used to get like all football, but we'd get South Australian football, believe it or not, down here of a night when he played at North Adelaide. And he was only a young fella then, so you had blokes like Craig Bradley, that was ex-Carlton, and all these guys. And you'd see them running around before they actually got drafted to their appropriate clubs, LA, North Melbourne and these sort of places. But he was the star back then.
Time with Campbell Brown and Jackson.
That was a headbutt.
There's a little bit happening. He's lost the plot here, Daniel Jackson. Browny's got inside his head. The experience there, the umpire's telling Browny to go away. We just have a look at this contest again.
Bang.
Oh, that's a magnificent hit.
Campbell, we've got a couple of people who've written in a couple of questions, mate, if you don't mind answering these for some of these guys.
Yeah, no worries, that's fine.
Always got to check, mate. This is from Steve from Western Australia. He wants to know your toughest opponent that you've played on and why.
There's probably a couple of guys that caused me a little bit of trouble. I got the job on Jason Ackermanis a couple of times when Brisbane were absolutely flying, and I was sort of a young kid coming through the ranks, and he was just so good on either side of his body, extremely fit, and just read the game so well. And because he was playing in a dominant side quite often, he'd go a couple of seconds before they'd actually won the ball, just knowing that Lappin or Voss or one of them would win it, and he'd just bolt a million miles an hour forward and get to the feet of Daniel Bradshaw or Alistair Lynch at the time, and you try and push him to the boundary, but he was so good on his left and right that it didn't really matter, and he just had an uncanny knack of timing those front and centres perfectly. So he was really hard to play on, and the other guy was Jeff Farmer. The Wiz. Picked him up a couple of times. More when he moved to Fremantle than when he was playing at Melbourne, but he was so elusive, and I remember I kept him to about 6 possessions one day at Subiaco, but he kicked 5 goals once. So, one of those guys that he didn't need to get the ball a lot to really hurt you, and it didn't matter if it was in the air, on the ground. He was a pretty good mark for his size. He was quick, and they're hard to sort of. You might be on top of them for a quarter or 2 quarters, but eventually at some stage they'll have a purple patch, and that's when they can go bang, 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 and kick 3 in 5 minutes.
While we're talking about that, Brownie, how did you go at training and playing on Cyril?
Yeah, I'd always
junior.
Yeah, in the intra-club games and the training set, I'd try and sort of steer away from him as much as I could. I'd send Graham Birchall or one of the other guys to him. But Cyril's one of the best players that I've ever played with.
From Hooker, but now they're in trouble. A hand pass from Slannery. Hooley came unstuck. Rioli, a little 1-2 at Bateman, gets through and kicks a goal. Marvellous stuff.
He's just a freak of nature, and it was a real shame that he retired at 28, because I reckon the way the game is now as well, with shortened quarters and things like that, he could have played till he was 35, doing what Sean Burgoyne's doing. So as good as he was, 4 flags and a Norm Smith and everything, I reckon we only got to see just over half of what Cyril could do.
Yeah, so you rate him as the best that you've seen?
I'd put Gary Ablett as the best I've seen. I think what he did up close and personal on the Gold Coast for that 3.5, 4 years was phenomenal. Probably Buddy second, and then probably Cyril. Okay. But I mean, all of them are going to be Hall of Famers.
Yep, and you still have good relationships with these guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I tend not to speak too much to Gary anymore, because we just sort of he lives his life and I live mine. but certainly the Hawks boys were in a WhatsApp group. We all just ping messages around, and there's guys all over the country. Brent Renouf, who's a premiership player in 08, and Cyril are in the Northern Territory. Obviously, Buddy's in Sydney. Grant Birchall's in Brisbane. She's on the Gold Coast. So we don't actually get to physically catch up too often, but we're all in the WhatsApp group and make sure we all say good day.
They're all stars. They're just very lucky. What I can gather with Hawthorn, that at certain times you were lucky to go there. When I first barracked we used to be cellar dwellers. I only barracked for Hawthorn, I think, through Peter Crimmins. And I was, as you said, as a young fella growing up, and your dad obviously being involved with being a Hall of Famer in Perth. But down here, we, it was more follow your local team. And, of course, back in those days, it was everything was black and white, Brownie. So I just saw the stripes one day as a kid. I said, I'm going for them, and I saw Peter Crimmins, and I thought that was it. So there was no science, mate, but I've been Hawthorn since I was about 5.
Should have been North Melbourne.
And I'm only 10 now. So,
another question, Charlene from Victoria wants to know, what was it like being coached by Alistair Clarkson?
Oh, there you go.
I think it's one of the great joys of my life, and you probably take it for granted a little bit while you're there, but certainly as I've got a bit older, left and went to another, you realise just how good a coach he is, and things that he instilled in me and the group, not just as footballers but as people. You take that for the rest of your life, and he's a great people manager. I think one of his greatest assets was that he just knew how to motivate the group, and everyone's different. Some need a bit of a kick up the arse and a spray. Some need a softer approach, but he didn't compromise standards. The very first thing he did as the senior coach at Hawthorn back in sort of November 2004 was put us all on a plane, and we flew over to Papua New Guinea and walked the Kokoda track.
You did the Kokoda.
And
of course.
That was unbelievable, and that became a big theme around the Hawthorn Footy Club. There's a battlefield called Isharava, and it's one of the great battles there that the Australian diggers had with Japan. And on that site, there's 4 pillars, and one word on each of the 4 pillars: courage, markship, endurance, and sacrifice. And sort of probably the first 15 years of Clarko's tenure at Hawthorn, they were the things that our game was judged on, and the set of behaviours that we tried to uphold. So he's a great man. He's physically loyal to his group. He's prepared to make a tough, ruthless list management decision when he has to, and I think that's been critical to Hawthorn's success, because if I'd have said to you 6 or 7 years ago that Franklin, Hodge, Birchall, would all finish, Mitchell, Lewis, would all finish their careers at another club, you'd laugh. You go, that's not possible. But a lot has been because Clarko's been prepared to put the team in front of the individual and make a really important and critical decision going forward.
Do you think that edge that he had, I watched him play as a footballer too, and he was he could have been a ruthless little player. I think I'd put it that way. He didn't mind he didn't mind a sharp one, as I call it, a little bit of an elbow or something, and got involved in it as a rover. All good rovers do, some of them. But he was. I just wondered too, with his teaching background as a school teacher, and I just wonder if that's why he's such a good motivator. Everyone talks about every football show. They all go on, why is he so good? Obviously, Jason Dunstall, he must have seen something in him when they dragged him over from Port Adelaide, got him over from there, and obviously coached in his own right at different clubs anyway, over there and other places to get that grounding. But the fact that he can reinvent himself so many times, obviously.
Yeah, that's really important. I think innovation as well. Like he likes to stay a step in front of the game and the competition, and he certainly is always looking for, an edge. And we won the 08 Premiership purely on the back of up with that full ground press, because other sides didn't know how to compete with it, and we were sort of executing it perfectly by the end of 2008. But he then had to reinvent himself and the game plan and the list again to sort of win 13, 14 and 15. And, if he wants to win another premiership, which I think that list is capable of doing, it'll be with a completely different set of players and game plan and everything. I reckon he's one of the coaches that during this period of isolation every day would have just been racking his brain, coming up with something obscure that he can bring to the table in round two and catch a couple of sides off guard. But, he's a great man. He always used to say to me, every time I get reported and suspended, I kept thinking, he's going to give me a spray, for letting the side down or something. But he just used to say to me, Brownie, keep doing what you're doing, because we don't want any of the good players to get rubbed out.
I don't believe that. Look, Brad, I'm not saying it because we got you on, but I am a diehard. As you know, I can keep saying I'm a diehard. But look, the fact is, back in the day, they played it rough and tumble. That's the way you played, and that's why I like the way you went about it. I think the thing is that when you went through the side, when Hawthorn wasn't going so well, what you alluded to when they had the line in the sand game, everyone talks about that. Everyone talks about when they played Essendon and that happened, and apparently as it goes, that Brereton went down and said something at half time, and the players went out and they'd had enough. Well, I think pride comes into it, and I think it's proven, isn't it, in grand finals, and only you can tell us this because I've never played at the level that you've played in or anything like that, but to play in a grand final, now I suppose that's the next question. I mean, the sacrifice, you 100 minutes of footy, I mean, what's that like? You run out on the ground and, you beat Geelong up in 2008. I'm glad they didn't kick straight, Geelong. And we kept airballing the ball through when we was allowed to do that. But the way that Hawthorn went about it, I don't know if it was a masterstroke. Stewie Jew came on. Kicked 3 or 4 goals with Williams and who else was down there? All the forwards actually. Trying to think who was there now, but
Cyril kicked a couple and Ruffy kicked a couple.
Ruffy obviously was Buddy, and it was just a complete.
So what
team effort?
What's it like?
What is it like to run out on the Jew, mate?
Take away marriage, kids, and all that sort of stuff. Is it the best thing in your life, other than?
There's no doubt that was the highlight of my footy career. You dream about that as a kid, but it's almost hard to believe that you can get yourself there. And I remember sort of when you're a young fella, you just want to get drafted, and then when you get drafted, you just want to play one game, and then when you play one game, you want to sort of become a regular player. And then I'd never even played a final until 2007, so I'd sort of been playing AFL footy for 6 years and didn't get to taste finals. So then you just want to, play in a final, and you never really think that you'll win a premiership. But I think the fact that we were massive underdogs was a plus for us that day because we went there with nothing to lose. No. We knew we matched up really well against the Cats. We'd always cause them trouble. We beat them in 06. We beat them in 07 when they went on and won the flag. We nearly beat them in round 17 in 08 on that Friday night game. So we knew we matched up well against them, and I felt like we were going in on that particular day full of confidence that we could knock them off. And like you said, they were their own worst enemies with their goal kicking and some of the sort of... They were the most unselfish side in the comp and had been for so long, and whatever happened that day, they
were the most selfish.
Become a bit selfish. And there was a few critical moments in the game where the biggest one for me was Brad Ottens when he strolled in and should have kicked a goal, and he had Tom Lonergan and Stevie J at the top of the goal square and missed. And obviously the big moment right on half time where Cam Mooney went back and missed, and we went in at half time in front somehow. We were absolutely rooted because it was a hot day and we'd just been defending for so much of the second quarter were hanging by a thread, and sort of halftime came at the right time, and we took our opportunities in the third quarter. But it was a great moment, and a great team performance, because we had a few stars that day that sort of didn't play their best, but guys like Xavier Ellis and Clinton Young and Michael Osborne and Chance Bateman and Brad Sewell, played above themselves almost. They were outstanding, and we managed to sort of steal a flag that we might not have sort of deserved, but we put ourselves in a position to get into a grand final there.
You were talking before about going to Kokoda. We are talking to you now because another superstar that we met just recently, Natalie Arnold, who has run marathons on 7 continents, just an amazing person. And she's put us in contact with you, mate, and you were actually in the Antarctica marathon yourself, weren't you? That's how you guys actually met up?
Yeah, I did. I sort of am a goal-orientated person. If I don't have something to strive towards, I become a little bit lazy and sort of don't have motivation. So a couple of years ago, me and 3 other mates, Tommy Little, Lockie Spark and Justin Quill, great mates of mine, we enrolled to do the Antarctic Ice Marathon, and sort of once we'd locked that in, that was the motivation we needed to start training, because 3 of the 4 of us had never done a marathon before, and flew to Chile, got on a plane and flew to Antarctica, and that's where we met. A great bunch of people. I can't tell you how good people they were, Nat being one of them, and there was a few Aussies on that trip, and they were all there just for the same reason, for to bit of self-discovery, but highly motivated people that had all done exceptionally well in their lives, in business and whatever that may be, and we've ended up forging some terrific friendships with a lot of the people that were on that trip, and from all over the world, America and Russia and just India, and just a lovely group of people. So that's how I met Nat, and that was our first marathon. She's done heaps of them. So she's ticked off a marathon in every continent now, and had a baby herself. So I don't know how she does it.
No, I don't know.
I'm never going to run it again.
No, you're not.
No, I don't know how you did it either, mate. How many kilometres was it? 40.
It's 42.2.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did you go, mate? Like, she was telling us about the cold and the feet getting wet and couldn't see and stuff. I
think she said you were breathing down her neck.
Yeah.
But, she said she couldn't see. She said she couldn't see 1 foot in front of it because she had the goggles. Was it the goggles on? Yeah.
The goggles fogged up a fair bit. The thing was that when we arrived there, it was about 1 degree and clear skies, and the most beautifully manicured sort of running course that we were meant to do. It was 2 laps of a 21.1 kilometre course.
Yep.
In the snow, but it had been nicely sort of manicured for us. And the 2 days leading up to the run, it just didn't stop snowing. And believe it or not, apparently that's pretty rare in Antarctica, because while it's an ice continent, it doesn't actually snow too much. So that's what they were telling us anyway. Okay. Anyway, it didn't bloody stop snowing. So what became the beautiful manicured course ended up being under about 8 inches of snow. And they changed the course to 4 10-kilometre sort of loops, or 10 and a bit kilometre loops, because the visibility was poor. And so it meant every single step you had no bounce or spring. You just sort of sunk down into the snow.
Yep.
So it was so much harder than what I can imagine a normal marathon would be, because you just sunk, and it was really hard work. So I was just happy to finish. I did it in sort of 6.5 hours, and not even sure what I came, but to me it didn't matter about the time. It was just about finishing, and it was bloody tough.
Wow. Absolutely amazing.
No, for sure. So some of the, I suppose I've got to mention, mate, you got rubbed out a few times in your career, didn't you? You knew you wasn't.
Yeah, 29 weeks.
Yeah, 29 weeks. Well, there you go. Yeah, that's a season, mate, and a bit.
But that's what
I know.
The people want to see that, though. That's
right. Well, you wouldn't be living up to the Hawthorn reputation, mate. You got Bert, and you're running around with all those I called them we're the cleanest football side ever to play, mate. We had blokes like yourself and Dipper Domenico and all these guys.
Do you feel that the rule changes and taking that aggressiveness out of the game has changed it for the better or for the worse, mate?
Yeah. Do you like the game today?
Yeah, it's different. Like I suppose no one likes the hits behind play and all that that probably you got in the 70s and 80s.
Yep.
It's great that that's been cleaned up. I used to try and use aggression as a form of intimidation a little bit. You know, you knew if you were playing on a guy that didn't like that, you get stuck into him. And
tries to hand one to Campbell Brown. They might get out of it. No, they might not.
And make their life difficult. That's sort of been taken out of the game now. So using that advantage, you just can't do, because as soon as you sort of go up and bump a guy or elbow him or whatever, the umpires are looking for that and they pay a free kick and you end up giving away a goal or something like that. And so that's sort of just been stamped out of the game. I used to love a perfectly executed shirt front. And that's one of the reasons I love watching guys like Brent Guerra and Byron Pickett, because there's an art in that in itself. But I suppose the way the rule changes are now, and any contact to sort of the head, even if it's by accident, you get rubbed out. So it's safer than it's ever been. I'm not saying that it's soft or anything like that, because I don't believe it is. It's still a really tough game of footy, and you still see guys sort of backing back into packs and things like that. But yes, some of the great hits, and even the big, tough, strong tackles now are almost outlawed, because you're driving them into the ground and stuff like that. So I still love watching the game. I'm probably glad that I don't play anymore, because my 29 weeks might have ended up being 50 weeks.
Yeah, tough now.
They were sort of. I was doing things that I reckon you might get a fine or 1 week today, and with the loading and the carryover points and all that system that was in place when I played late in my career, I was getting sort of 4 and 5 weeks when there's no way that the action deserved that, but cumulative effect, and so I refused to sort of change my playing style, so it was my own fault a little bit. I wasn't prepared to teach a new dog an old trick at 30 years of age. I thought that was one of the things that got me a game each week, so you had to take the good with the bad. You couldn't praise someone for their aggression and then the very next week not be happy with them because they overstepped the line and got rubbed out. I know that there's a delicate balance, but I'd like to think I played 205 games and only got 29 weeks, so I sort of got the balance right.
Yeah. No, I suppose you still go around and see your best mates, do you? Matty Lloyd and Stephen May.
That's nasty.
It was only a joke, Browny. We have a joke on this show.
No, that's all right. I get on pretty well with those guys.
Oh, I know you do. I picked up. I watched the shows, mate. That was a bit of a joke for the show. But also quickly, mate, because I like me horse racing. How you going with that? Have you got a racehorse yourself with a couple of guys, or is it mainly...
I've got 6 horses at the moment, and I love the punt. So I'm glad that that's one of the few things that the industry could keep going through COVID. It's given everyone something to do. Yep. I've got a pretty sharp one. It's a 3-year-old. It hasn't raced yet. It's called Crocodile Done Deal.
I remember that.
It's with Lindsay Smith, and it goes really, really well. So when you see that bob up in the next couple of weeks, it's going to trial next week, and then it'll be racing soon. I'd be sort of keeping an eye on that, because we're aiming for the Derby this year.
Oh, beautiful work,
I can tell you right now, Browny, you'll see it here on the Frothy, guaranteed.
You can always look at if you're having trouble, your TAB, boy, you can have a look at me tips. I don't know if you're winning.
We've got so much more to talk to you about, but I know you've got to go. You're in a real hurry. I was going to ask you about Kabaddi.
Oh yes, we was going to ask that.
Pronounce it Kabaddi.
Kabaddi. You're
Kabaddi, I call it.
Kabaddi, sorry.
But it's an interesting one.
We'll have a talk about it on the show later on, mate. We'll let people know, and we'll put some footage of what you're involved in and stuff. But mate, absolute pleasure to talk to you. Been fantastic.
Hopefully, mate. I noticed. I don't know if you still do it these days. You're up for. If you're down in Tassie or something, we might even bring you down, mate, if we could afford you. But
Well, I was
set up
I
a
was
show,
the
mate.
Tasmanian Racing Ambassador this year, so I did the Devonport Cup, the Lonnie Cup, and the
I
Hobart Cup, and I bloody loved it.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
well, you actually was
Come on
out.
down.
Actually, my son, I think, had a picture taken with you at one of the. Must have been at the pub, mate. I think he said, but he said you were a damn good bloke, and I said, well, of course he was, mate.
Well, Glenn, Natalie said to me when we were talking about you, she said that you're one of the nicest guys that she's ever met, mate. And we'd have to agree with that. You've been fantastic.
Yeah, no, we
and just
appreciate
unreal
you
to have
coming
on
on.
the
We
show.
know you're busy, and look, all the best, mate, to you and your family. And look, this would be fantastic if we could. Talk to you again at some stage.
Yeah, my word.
Yeah, anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful.
No, good
work,
on you,
mate.
Browny. You're
Thank you so
absolute
much.
star,
Cheers.
mate. Thank you.
Appreciate
Cheers,
it, mate.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Go on now.
So thank you so much, Campbell Brown. Thank you, Nat Arnold, for helping us with that interview. And talk about Nat Arnold, mate. She's just lined us up another person to talk to. Chris McDermott.
Well, again, I suppose I show my age, mate, but Chris McDermott, he was the skipper-do of the Adelaide Crows when they first came into the
Very
league.
first skipper.
He's as tough as my old diamond boots, mate, that I used to wear. You know when you used to put the screw-ins?
I don't want to talk
That
about
was like his
Oh,
face.
yeah.
He was one hell of a tough nut
Thought you were talking
that
about
played,
boots that you weren't
and
dancing.
he was the skipper, mate, when they had such a good side too.
Yeah.
When you had your Tony Modras and that.
Yeah.
So thanks, Nat. Gee,
And another Hall of Fame.
Oh, he's a Hall of Fame.
How many Hall of Fame people will we talk to? So there's Alan Johnson, there's Tony Martin, there'll be...
The first pick, you know, when they had the State of Origin, with the first pick.
So hang around for that, guys. We'll have notification on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel of when Chris is coming on. And we're interviewing Dale Rowdy Shearer
Oh, we are too.
on Saturday. So if you're an NRL fan, get onto that. That'll be coming up soon.
Just got to say too, if Browny still looks back at this too, we've never mentioned, mate, about your different charities that you've been involved in.
Yeah.
Apologise for that. We did run out of time, but I know you're involved with the Shane Warne. The Shane Warne charity. So well done with that, mate. And Cleve looks forward to your tips too.
And I also forgot to ask him about what it feels like to go break your pelvis.
Oh, he's had some nasty injuries. We didn't get that far, Brown. We'll get you on again, hopefully, mate.
Fingers crossed.
Only got a
Well, there you
bit
go,
of time.
guys. That's Campbell Brown, absolute champion, Hawthorn Premiership
Legend.
player.
Yeah, legend. His father was a legend too, and we're just very lucky to have him, mate.
Hope you've enjoyed it, guys. Thanks for joining us. This is the Friday Frothy.
Guys, off my reviews. You're listening to the Friday Frothy. What a fantastic show.